So I'd like to go ahead and introduce Nick Ramfos, who you can see up on the screen. Nick, thanks for joining today's Coffee Break TSMO webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And I just also want to echo that our thoughts are with all of the folks that are involved with the Keybridge situation, and certainly not anything anybody would want to have to go through, but hopefully things will progress as needed. It's just very unfortunate and a really horrific situation, and just want to give a shout out to all the folks that are having to work on that, and hopefully they'll get it to a point where it's going to be manageable, but that's going to probably take a lot of time. So
yes, yeah, I there's obviously so many reports in the news is coming in fast of what happened, but I think it's worth remembering that one of the reports coming in is that there was a notification to workers on the bridge that the ship had lost power, and that the workers started to move to stop traffic. And it's just a reminder that our operations and maintenance and construction crews around the country, they are the first line with the transportation public, and they're the face that the transportation public sees. And they might be out there doing construction work, but they are still responders. When it comes to an event like this, so I'm sure that there is a lot of people out there working like crazy.
Yeah.
So, Nick, before joining NOCoE in January, you were with the Washington Area Council of Governments. You spent nearly 28 years with them. Would love to hear, what are some of your favorite accomplishments during your time there?
I think the main thing was really just assisting commuters in the region with mobility options to get to and from work each day, and working with employers to establish or expand commuter benefit programs at their respective work sites. Also, I think that kind of the neat thing of late was just leveraging technology through customized apps for the program that kind of helped determine trip reliability based on recurring and non-recurring congestion and transportation. And it had the added benefit of gamification, which allowed commuters to earn points that they could then convert to cash for their daily commute. So that was something we worked closely on with the Federal Highway Administration through a grant that we received, and in concert with University of Maryland through their transportation center, and also worked a little bit with the CAT lab on that. Also worked to establish some other incentive programs. We had a flex time rewards program that really it paid people to stay home if there was a traffic incident along your route, and you decided to delay your trip either at home or work. You would get paid for that if you signed up for the program. And then we had some other ride sharing reward programs and a van pool incentive program. So just a lot of different incentives to get people to to nudge people or commuters to change their travel behavior. And I think one of the other interesting things was just working with the local jurisdictions and nonprofit groups in the region on FTA's Section 5310 program. It's called Enhanced Mobility, and that helped senior citizens, the disabled, as well as low-income travelers with mobility options to get them either to work, schools, doctor appointments, or maybe even to the grocery store. And that's a really important component because sometimes that portion of our population kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And I think it was just a fantastic program that we had operated. And then the other thing was this working to stand up the Metro Rail Safety Commission, and that set into place an independent regional entity in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And that was mandated by federal law for rail transit systems. They all had to establish a state safety oversight agency, and that entity was set up to really have oversight and enforcement authority to ensure continual safety improvements in WMATA's Metro Rail system. And this included everything from setting up office space, hiring staff, getting commissioners appointed, and getting legislation drafted and approved in all 3 states to create the commission, And that was through an interstate compact. Then that was eventually signed into law after several years of hard work and getting everyone on the same page. And then Congress had to approve that compact, and then eventually it was signed by the president, and that established the entity. And then we had, after that, we had to really do a lot of work to get the Federal Transit Administration to certify that commission to assume direct oversight, because they had kind of taken over the oversight. And some of you may have heard about, there were some accidents and just a lot of other safety issues that were going on at the time. So that happened, and then the certification, met a nationwide federal deadline for jurisdictions with rail transit systems to establish state safety oversight agencies. I think the one important thing too is over time, just working with our elected officials and other the DOT representatives, which were our state funding agencies, to really take the demand management side of things and incorporate it into our planning process. I think that really kind of made a difference. And I worked at a lot of other MPOs prior to that, being here. And so getting that ingrained into the planning process and then into our long range plan really made a difference with supporting transportation demand management throughout the region and through all of the planning efforts. And it's not just the tip, but also the congestion management process and many other planning activities that are associated with transportation operations in the region.
When you talk about travel demand management, and, getting into the planning process and that, where do you see that fitting in within the TSMO mindset, and applying it to what we try to talk about with the TSMO practitioners?
Yeah, well, TDM, I guess in my view, and some people could argue with me, but I think TDM is a TSMO strategy, and it really allows stakeholders. So whether you're the state, local jurisdiction, a transit agency, MPO, maybe a ride-sharing organization, it allows you to actively manage travel supply and demand, traffic operations, and parking by influencing choices that travelers make related to their destination, even the time of day that they choose to travel, the mode or route they take, or maybe a facility or lane they use to, they use. And that really kind of feeds into improving system reliability and efficiency. And it's really all about giving people choices and making sure that, that's available to the public. And then of course, collecting a lot of data on that, and then making, refining what needs to be changed or upgraded or improved. And sometimes you learn a lot of lessons when you put some of these programs out there in terms of what's working, what isn't, and then you have to make adjustments as you move forward.
Yeah, with with TDM, and the potential benefits for mobility and environmental benefits, were you, with the data that you had, were you able to see some of those effects in the work at Washington COG?
Yeah, so for the work I did here in this region, it really included a very robust evaluation component, and we just collected a lot of data. It was like a three-year data collection cycle. And we did a lot of surveys. We did surveys of our participants, surveys of the general public in terms of their satisfaction with travel, their knowledge of what their options were, their behavior in terms of their travel behavior, their overall awareness of our programs and other programs in the region. And so that really kind of led to us being able to come up with daily impacts of the and the program. The TDM program here was called Commuter Connections, and so we were able to come up with both transportation and emission impacts. So for instance, like we could say this last round of evaluation that we did, we had about 120,000 daily vehicle trips that were reduced as a result of the program, and over 2.1 million vehicle miles of travel were reduced daily. And then about almost a half a ton of NOx was reduced, and then about 0.3 tons of VOC. And then we also measured CO2 reductions on an annual basis, and that was almost 180,000 tons of CO2 reduced.
Wow.
So there was extensive monitoring and evaluation, and this was important because you really kind of, just like with anything, you need to show the return on investment. And we had some comprehensive data sets that we were able to essentially boil down to a quick elevator speech to tell, whether it was an elected official, the media, or whoever was interested, this is what the performance of the program is. And then a lot of that data also fed into oversight of the program, as well as streamlining certain programs, because if something wasn't working, then we can always make a change. And it's also, we also had to come up with cost effectiveness numbers. So whether we were looking at vehicle trip reduction or VMT reductions, we were able to basically say, hey, for every vehicle trip we reduced, we spent about 19 cents. We spent about a penny for every vehicle mile of travel reduced, and then maybe about $49,000 for every ton of NOx that was reduced, and maybe close to $60,000 for every ton of VOC that was reduced. And then I think we were spending about $27 for every ton of CO2 reduced. So this is important because it you could go out and put all these great programs out there and tell people, hey, we have this program, but if you don't go out and really measure the results of what those activities essentially boil down to, then it's kind of hard to justify what you're doing. So I think that it really kind of set a precedent for that industry, and saying, this is how we're collecting data. Now the interesting thing is that not everybody collects data in the same way or analyzes it the same way. So it's kind of almost like a cottage industry. So you kind of that was a missing link that I for years was trying to get folks just on the same page. But each region is going to be different, so it's kind of hard to measure, unless if you're comparing apples to apples. It's kind of hard to come up with a standard formula that everyone's going to buy into. But for us, it worked, and it was just a great way to show the effects of the program.
So, with your experience, working in regional council governments, what drew you to lead the National Operations Center of Excellence, and to focus more broadly on TSMO?
Yes, I think the ability to apply the skill set I was fortunate to acquire from working at MPOs across the country, and prior to WASHCOG, I was at SANDAG in the San Diego region. I was also at CATS, which is now part of CMAP in the Chicagoland region, and then SEMCOG in the Detroit region. And it really kind of allowed me to see both urban possibilities as well as rural possibilities, because all of those regions have an urban core, and then when you go further out, you get into the kind of the middle ring and the suburban areas, and then you also have the kind of the exurbs where it's still kind of rural. I think that being able to take that skill set to a national scale really attracted me to NOCoE, and in specific, the goals that are set for NOCoE, which include helping to expand the TSMO workforce, accelerating the deployment of current and emerging TSMO practices, and then mainstreaming TSMO as a core function of providing transportation solutions for everybody, was really an attractive challenge for me, as well as an opportunity for me to undertake to be able to grow that area, not only just in a particular region, but all across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's been just about 2 months since you've started, and it's been a very busy 2 months for those of you who are been following NOCoE and participating in peer exchanges and webinars and releasing of new case studies and everything that's been going on here. So and you've been leading the work in those areas, including the upcoming total solar eclipse. Can you talk a little bit about the eclipse? I guess first, can you talk a little bit about some of the areas that you've already jumped into and been leading, and then perhaps more specifically about the upcoming eclipse and the resources you've been developing?
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of reading, and there's just a lot of and I went right back to the beginning in terms of how did NOCoE get started, and there was a lot of NCHRP and SHARP two reports that I went through and just kind of wanted to really kind of get a sense of, where did things start, how have they evolved, and where are things going. And I think just participating in some of the webinars, just as a listening in, I think there's just a lot of fascinating things going on in a lot of different areas in the TSMO world. And there are a lot of really passionate folks that are very committed to this industry, which is great to see. And I think a lot of these folks are, it's not just a 9-to-5 job for these folks. A lot of them really care about, where things are going and the operational aspects on a day-to-day basis. And so whether it's, work zone management or transportation incident management, or any of the other areas that, special events, in the case of the eclipse, there's a lot of caring individuals, and that's the immediate thing that I noticed when since I've been here. And I think the upcoming solar eclipse in North America, which is going to be happening here very soon, April 8th, it's going to be, once in a lifetime experience for I think it's about 35 million or so individuals that are going to be in that path of totality from Texas to Maine. It's expected that the movement of both residents of those 15 states and incoming tourists will make April 8th into really a large scale special event. And it's going to be everywhere. So whether you're in an urban area or a rural area, I mean, we've heard a lot of different stories about, what's happening. There's a lot of special events going on. And there was a recently held webinar by Federal Highway through NOCoE that had, I think, over 500 participants. And Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's like an all-time high in terms of viewership or participation in a webinar. So that just kind of tells you the scale of this. And I thought that webinar was very informative. So it was like a 3-hour webinar. So, and that's pretty lengthy, but it was very informative. And I think a lot of folks they really hung on to the very end. And it really kind of showed best practices and lessons learned from the 2017 eclipse. And Adam's kind of scrolling through what NOCoE has developed in terms of a resource page. And that page has, just so folks know, has had about 1,400 views in just the last week, which makes up about 45% of the website views in total, which is a pretty huge number. We've also developed a communications toolkit that can be used to get the word out through community organizations or other entities that are hosting these events, because the traffic component of this is really important. It's great to get there and it's a short event, but if everybody tries to leave at the same time or tries to get there at the same time, I mean, there's definitely going to be some traffic issues. So we're really trying to get a clear message out to a lot of these organizing entities that you really need to, it's great that you're attracting people to your event, but you also need to let them know about their travel options and what they should be considering, because nobody's going to want to sit in a 15-hour traffic jam afterwards. And that, from what I understand from 2017, a lot of that did happen. So hopefully that's a lesson that not only a lot of these entities that are hosting these events learn, but maybe the folks that participated back in 2017 will say, "Oh, I'm never again. I'm not going to, I'm going to change, my arrival, and then I'm going to stay a while, and then I'll leave afterwards." So that this way you have a staggered type of an approach. In terms of from an operational standpoint, it'll just make it a lot more pleasant for a lot more people.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the eclipse from 2017 went the opposite direction across the country, and where it crossed was southern Illinois, Missouri region, Carbondale specifically in southern Illinois, where the eclipse crossed. And so I noticed that we've been following a lot of the Illinois and Missouri folks because they just went through this, and and know their stuff in terms of where people are going to be arriving, and they certainly learned. But hopefully, I think a lot of people as well who are new to it have been reading the.
And Adam, I don't know if we could do this, but there's this really cool video that our ASTO directors put together, and I don't know if you're able to play it or not, but I think everyone should see this because it's just a few minutes, but it's just really, I think it just kind of summarizes everything in terms of what everyone should be thinking about and doing.
Yeah, let me make sure. Let me know if the sound doesn't play, Nick, but
okay.
But we can play it.
As we prepare for the once-in-a-lifetime solar eclipse on April 8th, here is a brief safety message brought to you by some of your favorite Midwest states.
Here are some safe driving tips for traveling during the upcoming solar eclipse.
As you make your way to your chosen eclipse viewing location, be prepared for potential heavy traffic.
Exercise caution while driving and consider planning your route in advance.
Turn your headlights on during the eclipse. It will be dark even though it is daytime.
Resist the temptation to take photos while driving. Make this a memorable journey, not a risky one.
If you find yourself on the roads during the eclipse, avoid stopping on the interstate or on the shoulder.
Exit the highway to take in the celestial show.
Finally, arrive early, stay put, leave late.
Safe travels.
I really applaud the efforts of those directors. I think that they really got together and they really worked to get this message out, and it's going to be all over the place. So hopefully folks will listen to some of their advice. We'll see.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with all of this. Particularly if there's not a lot of, if it's not clouded over that day. It's gonna make a difference, but for some areas, if they don't have a good viewing, then it may not be a big deal. But I think that it's all weather dependent as well. So
we have just a few moments left. If anybody has any questions for Nick, please feel free to put them in the chat box or raise your hand. And of course, Nick's available. We'll put his email and contact information in the chat box as well. He's available for any follow-up questions or to reach out to him directly. But can you tell us a little bit about other changes that you've been implementing and what else we're going to be seeing from NOCoE in the next 6 months or the rest of the year?
Yeah, so right now we're looking at updating our strategic plan, and this is kind of our roadmap in terms of how things are, what our goals and objectives and other things that we really want to accomplish. And so we're really talking with leadership about that, as well as our some of our executives and our private sector members to figure out where would you like things to go, beyond what we've already done. We're also updating our collateral materials. We're streamlining our website functionality and the taxonomy, as well as we're going to have this really cool interactive map that'll have a lot of information for each of the states. Some of you may be familiar with our transportation operations manual that was published through ASTO last year. So we're really literally going on the road and having some webinars with some of the folks at the state DOT levels that are using the TOM to essentially ingrain it into everyday operational activities that they're tasked with doing. And it's a really great resource. And we're hoping at some point that folks will use this on a daily basis. It's almost like having your own in-house consultant, so to speak, to make things happen from a TSMO operational aspect. We're also updating some of our rosters for our technical advisory committee, as well as our strategic advisory council, just because there have been some slots that needed to be filled. And of course, all of our webinars, whether it's Talking Tim, the TOM webinars I just referenced, our coffee break like we're doing today, those are going to continue, as well as our regularly scheduled webinars with subject matter experts on hand to discuss a variety of TSMO strategies, whether they're already in place or if they're emerging strategies, we want to really focus in on those. And then we have some peer exchanges that are happening on a virtual basis as well as in person. We just had one on work zone management, which was excellent. It was a virtual peer exchange. And then we have some upcoming ones on emergency operations, as well as, well, that one's going to be in person, and then some one on active transportation. And then we're really doing some outreach to other organizations so that we can expand our reach. So whether that's to the transit community, TDM professionals, or MPO practitioners, we're connecting with their industry organizations to get our message out to them during their annual meetings. So we'll have exhibit booths at those meetings, as well as we're putting together some panel discussions. And that includes organizations like CTAA, ACT, AMPO, and then of course we'll be working with our partners at ITE and ITS America to make sure that individuals that attend their annual meetings know about our program. Of course, we have the TTT with the students. That'll be also happening at ITE, and I think there's a lot happening in that whole space.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to look forward to the rest of the year. So, in general, you mentioned the amount of energy that you've sort of reignited into our advisory committees and materials and outreach to new groups. Something I know I've been really excited to be able to do. It's something that we've wanted to do for a while, and really excited to work more closely with MPOs and planners and local agencies. What about the long-term direction of the TSMO industry, and how will NOCoE keep supporting practitioners, as things change for the industry in the coming years?
Yeah, and before I answer that too, I also want to say, I was talking a little bit about how we were able to incorporate TDM into the planning process. I think the same thing needs to happen with TSMO, and some organizations are probably good about that, and they're probably doing it already. So whether that's at the state level or even at the MPO level, I think that's going to be a message that we want to really kind of get out there, including with the TDM folks, to basically let them know, hey, you're part of this as well. It's not just people that are doing operate on the road operational activities, but it's also this whole idea of getting messages out to the individual or to organizations. So whether it's a special event or your daily commute or just getting to the doctor, this all really kind of has to be incorporated. But long term, I think we're collecting information, as I mentioned, for our strategic plan. We're also doing some informal polls, and we're having dialogue with our stakeholders. So whether that's at the federal level with Federal Highway or ITE or ITS America, I think all of that information that we're going to gather will certainly direct the course over the next few months and years, because that will go into our strategic plan. And I'm also looking forward to engaging with our Strategic Advisory Council, as well as our Technical Advisory Committee, and our partners, that will hopefully lead to new outreach efforts to new TSMO professionals or maybe practitioners at the national and local levels, including those that are at MPOs or TDM organizations, or anyone with an operational background that's working in safety or mobility capacity. I think that's really our target market. And then we also, I think we want to build on our recently released What's New at NOCoE, and these are products and services that we're offering. So whether it's a case study, webinar, additional educational outreach, and I think Adam was kind of showing some of that early on, but we need to build on that and make it as robust as possible and as interesting as possible, so that the individuals in these positions are able to take advantage of it.
I want to thank Nick so much for coming on so soon into your tenure to talk about all the work that you've you've done and what we're doing going forward. I'm going to encourage you to go to the What's New report or the Eclipse report, especially under What's New. You'll see how you can, the bottom of What's New, you can reach out to Nick directly and ask any questions of him offline. And not seeing any questions here now, I think we'll close up the conversation. Nick, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to working with everyone, not anyone, but everyone. And if you have any, questions, or you just want to, chat about anything, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to, have those conversations with you, whether it's, through email or, you can also, give me a call if that works better for you.
Have a great day, everybody.